At least she had she was sitting there and had a box. Sorry.
It's okay. It is 1:35. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. All right. Let's start off with we have, can we do a roll call? I'm not saying that on the.
Yes, absolutely.
Chairman Guam.
Sounds good. Johannes Chimueno. Judith Cooper. Dale Becker. Rebecca Estrada. Present. Bryn Davis.
Present.
Deborah Moore.
Present.
Yashoda Naidu. Joshua Orozco.
Present.
Carlos Romero. Mathis Shednick.
Present.
Casey Durant. Present. Sabrina Ezel. Present. Georgina Frank.
Present.
Philip Ingram. Commissioner John Crump. Commissioner Manuel Sanchez.
Trying to get him to move over. He's on here, but he.
Paul Espinosa.
Present.
Amber Gallup. Present. Sarita Nair. Greg Trapp.
Present.
Senator Carrie Hamlin. Alex Greenberg. Carl Adams. Kobe Wilson. Kyla Kugler. Present. Ashley Long. Kelly Roki Orth. Present. John Clark. Carmela Martinez. Arsenio Romero. And Commissioner.
Yeah, he just joined, so if you want to ask.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez.
Present.
And with that, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Always exciting when we get a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We just finished the state workforce conference, and it was a great conference. I think some of us were able to join. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. I wanted to thank everybody who put it together. I know doing these things is a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of stress, a lot of long nights. And all I can say is I can see that you worked a lot on it because it went off without a hitch. I'm sure there are plenty of problems in the background, but nothing that I could see. It looked fantastic. So thank you for that. A lot of good presentations, and some of the things that were at the conference, I think we can start looking at here. So I'm excited to do that as well for everybody who couldn't make it. And so again, just thank you for coming. I think we should be able to move pretty quickly through today's meeting. We've got a couple of things to vote on. That should move pretty quickly, but then some data to look at. We're gonna look at the performance measures that we had for the program year ending, which ended in June of this year. So we're gonna get to look at that. We'll get a little bit info on what that means. So excited for that. And then just updates from our committee chairs, updates from our partners. So it should be a good meeting today. All right, let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes? Oh, thank you, thank you. I forgot, we have a few new board members I'd like to introduce. Casey Durad with New Space Nexus, welcome. I don't know if you want to take a minute just to kind of introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am the CEO of New Space Nexus, which is a nonprofit established to grow the space industry in New Mexico. We say for the nation. It was a convening organization. We started in 2019 and have been able to do some great things to grow our space industry in the state already. Have a number of programs to support. We say it's unite and ignite space. So we unite by bringing together the space ecosystem, but then we also ignite by providing resources, whether it's connections on equipment, open labs, and best of all, workforce. And so we have started with partnership with our cabinet secretary Pathways to the Stars. So we're working on a workforce pathways initiative to help get those early childhood all the way through early career into the space company jobs opportunities.
I love that name, Pathway to the Stars. Well, welcome, thank you for joining us. I'd also like to introduce Georgina Frank with Exhibit. I think you're online.
Yes, hi, I'm Georgina Frank Tan, and I am the new owner of Exhibit. I purchased from DJ Heckes last December. She was a former board member, so I'm taking her seat. We are a local trade show and event marketing and display firm based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico and have spent the last 20 years living abroad, only to return in 2022. And kind of reconnect with the community and the small business community, and eager to learn from the board here and contribute back to New Mexico.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming back to New Mexico. We love it when somebody comes back to our state. And then finally, Dr. Sabrina Zell with UNM Gallup.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sabrina Ezel, and I'm the chancellor at the branch of UNM in Gallup. Very happy to be here. As you might assume or might know, that our community college offers credit-bearing and non-credit courses that help us address many of the vacancies around workforce. And I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Right, and then I'd also like to introduce a guest we have in the audience, Rebecca Sarmiento. She is the division chief for Division of Workforce Investment, U.S. Department of Labor out of Dallas, the regional office there. So,
Great to be here.
thank you for joining us. All right, let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to our agenda today? I'm not seeing any. All right, so then the agenda stands. We don't need to make any changes. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes. This is for our special meeting we had back on June 25th. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes from June 25th.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
I second Paul Espinosa.
Thank you, Paul. Has everybody had a chance to review those, and are there any changes? I'm not seeing or hearing any. All right, let's move to a vote. For those in the room, all those in favor, please say aye, and then we'll do a roll call for those online. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, and then online, let's do a quick roll call if we could.
Bryn Davis,
Aye.
Georgina Frank Tan,
Aye.
Deborah Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez, Commissioner Sanchez, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, the minutes are approved. Okay, now the next item is the ratification of decision items we had at the June 25th meeting. My understanding is we had a little snafu with the way the meeting was advertised, is that correct? So just to be sure that we're following the Open Meetings Act, we contacted the AG's office, said, hey, this is what happened. What should we do? They said, well, just ratify your vote at the next meeting and everything's okay. So that's what we're gonna do today. What we did back in June is we approved the minutes from our April 3rd meeting. We had the data validation policy, the eligible training provider policy, and we approved the Open Meetings Act for the board. I don't know if anybody wants to view any of those were previously approved. We could simply just do a motion to ratify all of those votes. So we could do it in a single vote. But if somebody would like to take an item specifically and look at that, we can.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, the AG office advised that we do them one at a time.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll do it one at a time. Definitely don't want to be crossed with the AG's office. Okay, so just really quickly, does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to discuss in depth on any of these items? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So then let's go ahead and move. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our April 3rd meeting?
Motion to approve April 3rd meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there a second?
Seconded, Bryn Davis.
All right, I think Mathis, I heard Mathis with the second. Any discussion?
I do want to say that you're doing a really good job with these minutes, so whoever puts them together, I want to compliment them.
Thank you, Graham. Yes,
Good job,
thank you, Carla. I've done minutes in my life and they're not easy, so definitely do appreciate all the hard work you put there. All right, all those, again, in the room, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And then online, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Bryn Davis,
Aye.
Georgina Frank Tan,
Aye.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez.
Yes.
Yeah, good too. Tell me
I apologize. Deborah Moore.
Yes.
All right, with that, the meeting minutes are approved. Now moving on to DWS 23-002, the data validation policy. Is there a motion to approve? Thank you, Secretary. Is there a second?
Second.
Amber. with the
Amber
second.
Gallup.
Thank you. All right, any discussion? Not seeing any. All right, all those in favor in the room, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, moving online, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Bryn Davis,
Aye.
Georgina Frank Tan,
Aye.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Deborah Moore.
Yes.
All right, the data validation policy is approved. Moving on to DWS 23-005, the eligible training provider policy. Is there a motion to approve?
I so moved.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
I second Paul Espinosa.
Thank you, Paul. All right, in the room, all those in favor, please say, or any discussion? All right, not seeing any. In the room, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, let's move on to the roll call vote.
Bryn Davis,
Aye.
Georgina Frank Tan,
Aye.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Deborah Moore.
Yes.
All right, the eligible training provider policy has been approved. Now, moving on to the approval of the State Workforce Development Board Open Meetings Act resolution. Is there a motion to approve? Thank you, Secretary. Is there a second?
Second.
Second with Kelly. All right, any discussion? Not seeing any. All right, let's move to vote. All those in the room in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, let's go with a roll call vote, please.
Bryn Davis,
Aye.
Georgina Frank Tan,
Aye.
Commissioner Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Deborah Moore.
Yes.
All right, our OMA resolution has been approved. All right, thank you, everybody. Boom, 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 boom. We got that. All right, let's move on to the next item, performance updates. And we've got Michael Yang here to do that for us.
Is there a microphone?
Yes.
I'll just carry
It's like the Price is Right. Microphone.
Yes, this is my Bob Barker moment. Alrighty. I was requested to present some performance data regarding program year 23 and give an update regarding performance negotiations. So thank you for the invitation to present in front of the board today. If you have questions as we go, ask them as you will, and if I have the answer, I'd be happy to provide it. If not, we will track that down and go there. All right, so go ahead and move to the forward. Whoa, wow, that was a go back one if you will.
Sorry.
All righty, so we're gonna look at, so my name is Mike Leading. As stated, I work for the Department of Workforce Solutions. I am the WIOA performance manager. I handle federal performance reporting for Title I and Title III. And I also help with data analysis and data requests as they come into the agency. Today, we're going to be talking about these three things: adult dislocated worker, youth, and employment services, and how the performance went across the federal metrics for program year 23. We'll then talk about the negotiated performance levels that the state of New Mexico has already conducted with the United States Department of Labor, and where we landed on performance levels for the upcoming 2 program years. Then we're going to talk about where we are in our progress towards conducting local workforce development board performance negotiations. So that's what we're going to cover, and we'll move to the next slide. All righty. So on this first slide, I'll take a minute to slow down here and explain how this thing is laid out and what it all means. So when you talk about program year 23, that is from July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. So that is considered that program year. Here on our slides, we're going to start out with adult, which is the Title I program. Our first column there is the measure. The fraction is the denominator is the number in the measure. The number to the left of that, the 628, we're a positive in that measure. The next column over is the actual performance. That's just simply the percentage, how much 628 was of 895. Which is 70.17% got their credential. Our goal as a state is 64%. The percent achieved is how much of that 64% did we achieve? We overachieved by 109, we're 109.64% of the state goal. So just so we kind of all understand that. So as you can see for adult, we exceeded all performance goals that we set. These goals were negotiated goals for that program year, 22 and 23. So everything was exceeded across adults. Credential, Q2 employment. Maybe I'll just walk through just for a moment because I have a microphone. So for attained credentials, so that is for people, percentage of folks who get a credential who are in a funded education and training program. Employment second quarter after exit, that is to see if people are working after we've served them. Employment fourth quarter after exit, same thing, but a little further on the line in time after we have served them. Measurable skill gains, are they gaining skills? It's a real-time measure. As people are in training programs, are they gaining skills along the way? So there's no lag in data regarding skill gain. Median earnings. Oh, I did put it up there. I didn't think I did. All right. Congratulations to me. So median earnings, it's a wage-based measure, but it's a little different animal. It's not an average of what people are earning in a quarter. It's essentially looking at all of the people who are showing a positive for second quarter after exit. And who's the middle person? That's median. And our goal was $8,000, and we know that we well exceeded all median measures. And as a state, we were at $11,098 for that. Any questions as we go? Okay, we'll start
I'm
with-
curious how the skills gains are measured. Is there an exam that you're using?
So there are 5 different methods in which to document a skill gain.
I see.
One is increase in education funding level, function level, excuse me. And there's details behind that. Another is, oh God, what? Just a document a measurable skill gain. They get their report, for example. They can say, hey, you are progressing and.
Got it.
So there's 5 different
So it's a
methods.
composite measure. We have that in adult education
Yeah.
too, but I just was curious how. Okay.
Yeah, it is all spelled out in Teagle 1016, and Cheryl Roscoe and I were kind of discussing, and there may be a point in time where we get a little more in the weeds of the mechanics of these measures to understand the performance and how to operate, a little bit of the math, a little bit of the 5 methods of documenting a skill gain are allowable. So thank you.
Thank you.
So if I was to look at this and look at progression individual coming out with eventual, that individual ends up in Q2, in Q4, skills gains, that individual be measured throughout all of those.
So yes, they would be credential Q2, Q4. Okay, it all depends on when the time windows in which each is measured are different for each measure, for each metric.
Okay.
It's all based on exit date. Exit date, and this is when we get into the training portion of this, but an exit date basically means the timestamp. It's when the workforce system has no longer served an individual for 90 days. Exit date happens if they are in participation training program, then 90 days goes by, exit. Well, each measure looks at a different point in time. Employment Q2, second quarter after exit, we look for wages. If there are wages there, great. So if somebody's at Q2 employment, we won't see any Q4 yet, because we have to wait 2 more quarters to go by before we see that. Credentials completely different. We have 4 quarters in which to put in a credential or additional training program into the system for a credential to show positive. So there's 4 quarters. So the time windows lag differently. Is what I'll say. Thank you. Any other questions here?
But on the median earnings,
Yes.
is that an annual?
That should be for the quarter.
That's just for the quarter.
Yes. Yeah.
One
so-
question.
Yes.
Work keys, is that leverage anywhere within here?
Let me think about this. It is leveraged if a given board is using work keys as an assessment. Right. You won't see it in performance unless maybe they're using it. I don't know if you can document education funding level on that. I would have to dig in a little bit. Max is coming up. So. Oh, no, he's not. All right.
Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll read across the chart here.
Michael. He's gonna
Oh,
turn it.
it's turning it on, sorry.
Oh. No. Let's test the gain here. All right, that sounds good. I feel like I advanced in technology. I was retro for a minute, which is always cool. All righty, I'm gonna read across the chart here. So we have program year 2023 for adult. For the measure of for the performance metric of credential attained, we had 895 people in the measure, 628. We're showing a positive in the measure, which equals an actual performance of 70.17% on a goal of 64%. And that is 109.64% achieved. For employment quarter 2 after exit, we have 2,600 people in the measure, 1,508 showed a positive, showed wages for this measure. That is an actual performance of 82.58% on a goal of 76%, which is a 108.66% achieved on the goal. Moving to quarter 4 employment, 1,785 in the measure, 1,449 show a positive, which is 81.18% actual. On a goal of 76%, which is 106.81% achieved on the goal. For measurable skill gain, 1,596 in the measure, 1,210 showing a positive, showing a measurable skill gain. Actual performance of 75.181% on a goal of 63.60%, which is 119.21% on the state goal. Median earnings, the goal is 8,000, the actual is 11,098.81. For an achieved percentage of 138.74. There's a 0.74 effect. All right, go ahead.
There's one more question. Are these outcomes for all of PY 2023, or is it just, that report?
That is all of the program here.
Okay, so for example, the denominator 1,826 would be the total number served
The total number in the measure,
in
yes.
the measure.
And each measure is gonna have different time windows, so the totals vary. And then you can look at different cohorts, or different exit cohorts. Is how I describe it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Really quick, Michael.
Yes.
You're gonna cover adult, dislocated worker and youth. Could you please just very quickly describe what those are?
Okay, adult is a Title I program. I don't know the specifics of the program, not program, but I am reporting. But there's eligibility for adults, and they fund people in training programs, and as well as career services, but mostly training programs from the Title I perspective. Career services is traditionally picked up in our state with Title III, but it's allowable for them to provide those services. And there's supportive services along with training plans and things of that nature to keep it abridged. Dislocated worker program, similar to adult, different eligibility, but we find challenges in, I believe, of connecting with the dislocated worker populations and connecting with dislocated worker funding. We do see traditionally moving funding from dislocated worker program to adult. That is not a New Mexico problem. It's a challenge. It's a challenge of the workforce system. So that's dislocated worker. Youth serves, I believe, 16 to 24-year-olds. I believe they can go below 16, so don't quote me on 16. I believe 15 now. That conversations are popping in my head, but we serve youth, in-school youth, out-of-school youth, and I believe it's 70-30. I can't remember. I believe it's 70% intended to connect with out-of-school youth and 30% in-school youth, and that is not a percentage of people. I believe that is tied to percentage of funding. Throw a shoe at me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
I didn't mean to put you on the
Yeah.
spot. Just
Yeah,
because we
no
have a
problem.
few new board members, so
Yes.
to understand the difference.
So that's what we consider Title I. Adult, dislocated worker, and youth. There's separate cohorts of people. They can be co-enrolled across there a little bit to keep it simple. Then I will be talking about, you will be hearing a few things that are all the same thing. So you will hear Title III people. You'll hear Wagner Advisor people, and you will hear employment services people. Those are all the same people. It's all career services. It's helping people find work. And they're a participant with Wagner Advisor, the program that's funding. So just for your information. Also, if you hear things like the job system, the workforce connection online system, or a noise we make called WCOS, those are all the same thing. And that is our case management system where we pull all this data out of just for the members. So those are, if you ever wonder if that's something different, you should ask. Because we like to pronounce acronyms and do fun things. So, all right, any other? Okay, we're good to go. All righty, so we're going to move to dislocated worker. Good slide.
Is it moving?
Nope, it's not moving. Not moving. I didn't put animations. Sorry.
Did it move? I don't know. It's moving on this end.
So picture this. Picture there's a slide to dislocated. So preview, we passed all the measures for dislocated worker. And thank you guys for that. There it is. All righty. So all green, all above achieved here. And just for your information as well, nugget of information. as we give you the fire hose here. If a measure is less than 100%, it still passes. Anything below 90% of a given goal, that's where we don't pass. So just FYI. In our performance management system, it comes up as yellow, but we're still okay. You won't see yellow today, but just nugget of information. Alrighty, so for program year 23 for dislocated worker, I'll just read across the slide here. We are all passing. For credential, attained credential, 341 in the measure, 230 showed positive. Actual performance of 67.45% on a goal of 61%, achieved 110.57% of the goal. Employment quarter 2, 524 in the measure, 404 showing positive. Actual performance of 77.1% on a goal of 70.4%. And that is 109.52% of goal. Employment quarter 4, 694 in the measure, 523 showing positive. Actual performance of 75.36% on a goal of 71.3%. And we are achieving at 105.69% of the goal. Skill gain, 424 in the measure, 303 successful, 70.79 actual performance on a goal of 62%. And we have achieved at 114.18% of goal. Median earnings, goal of $7,850, actual of $11,019.27. We passed that measure. Any questions?
I do have a question online here, Georgia.
Yes.
How are the goals set?
So, and we were going to talk about this later, but
Sorry.
no, don't be sorry. So the stated goals, those goals are set between Department of Workforce Solutions and negotiated with the United States Department of Labor. So we performed those negotiations this time of year, 2 years ago for this program year. So we negotiate with USDOL and myself, Mags, Veronica Alonso, and Michelle Velarde from Employment Services. We sit down, we look at a statistical model which forecasts where USDOL feels performance is trending. We also use past program performance and any initiatives that we know that may be ongoing for a given program year, we may consider that. And then we have a negotiation and we slide a little piece of paper across from each other and somebody accepts it. It's not really that high stakes. By and large, the United States Department of Labor wants to see us succeed. But they want to see a bar that gives us something to reach for that is attainable. The USDOL has no interest in seeing every state fail measures and then we burn some time. It was a very good for these program years. They talked us off the ledge a little bit on a couple. They were like, we think you're too high, which I appreciate. And so it's a general discussion, collaboration, conversation, and we reach the right we reach an agreed measure and we go from there. Yeah.
But you way exceeded every goal by
Yeah.
a shocking amount, right? Is that
Well,
because you said it during the pandemic or?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a negotiation for these program years, or for 22 and 23,
Yeah.
is they were like, okay, we just didn't know exactly the impact of the pandemic. So, everybody was kind of.
We did the same. And
Yeah, we were just like, hey, let's.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so it's not me. I just do a negotiation. I worked really hard to get these people employed. It definitely wasn't me. It's our workforce boards. It's understand. It's everyone. I'm the least important person in all of this. I just like negotiating with people and setting measures. I find it interesting in looking at data. And then when we had our negotiations for 24 and 25, which happened earlier this year, they look at that type of thing. It's like, wow. And there is an adjustment performance thing that's deep in the weeds. But what actually happened and who actually served, this whole coefficients that increase and decrease performance based on the populations you serve, that's all in that math. In a nutshell, they adjust a little bit for who actually was served, and then we line up what's better. Yes.
Thank you.
think you may have mentioned it. I think you did mention this. Could you please remind me what population is being measured in the employment quarters? And are we seeing the newly credentialed people in those employment quarters?
So. Yeah, we're gonna. Let me make sure I answer the question. So if I don't, or if I'm off, let me know. Repeat your question. Sorry.
What population is being described in the employment quarters?
So these are people eligible for dislocated worker funding. They are adult, I'm sorry.
No,
Go
so I
ahead,
think
Rebecca.
what she's saying is, so the credentialed people could be in employment Q2 or employment.
They could,
Q4.
yes,
So could the newly credentialed, it's the Q2 and Q4 are after they exit, right? So it's based
Correct.
on when they're exiting. Sorry, I'm also on the regional board.
yeah.
So it's when they exit the system and where they're at in employment in Q2
Right.
and Q4. The credentials may be in there, they may not be.
So if we had an individual exit today, this quarter has to end. Quarter one has to pass after this quarter ends, which is September, and September 30th. I exited. Now, quarter one, another quarter has to pass after, that's gonna take me to December. Then from January to March, so that's quarter two. We look at quarter two to see if there are wages connected to that person reported by employers through UI tax. Wage match. So that's that group of people. So if there is potential that somebody reports a credential at the same time that they gain work, in a caseworker, you know, they say, hey, here's my diploma, put it in. They put it in, the credential would say yes, and that person would happen to be the second quarter after exit, which is very well, maybe, they could also be part of that denominator. There is some overlap in certain systems. Thank you. Question?
Just out of curiosity, looking at the data, for all of them. If you look at, say, credentialing here, 230, 241, 110 gap. Of the 110, and just overall in these categories, is there any trend analysis that lets you understand how what you did at the beginning as a human as a credential that helped them be part of the 230? And then if they go on, like you said, at the end of March, part of the 404, then they continue from the part of the 523. Or the assessment of that you could pull from this data.
We can pull that from this data, and Josh and I were talking about a little bit, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to go to the Future Works presentation when we were changing the data story.
Yes.
And that's really it. It kind of starts with this type of thing.
Yeah.
Looking at this data causes you to ask good questions about who are these people, what services were provided, maybe if they didn't succeed, was it they dropped out? What was the reason for dropping out? Was there a lapse in service? Was there COVID?
Yeah.
And that's the whole performance data. That's the analysis portion of it. Is and you know, and we do have the Future Work system available for each workforce board, myself, and various people in it to help drill down on that and understand the why behind the performance. And that helps make good decisions programmatically. It helps form good policies to understand why people aren't crossing the finish line. So,
And right, does the Department of Labor ever ask you about the 110 people in terms of setting the next set of performance targets as to what you could do in the next program year to shrink that gap then?
we have, so you admit, Department of Labor won't ask us. They won't ask us. It is a good conversation for the state to have with each individual board. All this performance is broken down by board. Yeah, this is the big role up here, which is the only thing we have to report to USC as well. But that is the conversation to understand what's the technical assistance or training or case management, what's needed to, you know, some of that might be data entry, right? But you have to look to know, and service provision. You have to look to know, and it's asking the questions and then diving in and just kind of getting a little bit more granular. And it takes you different directions. What you're asking, what the question is. All right. I think we're okay to move to youth. Okay, Max is, I'm like, he's coming up here to police me, which is fine. He's my boss. He has the authority. He's got the badge to do it. All right.
One moment. Carla has it.
Carla's
I
got the
don't.
magic touch, okay. So, our main piece of conversation on this slide is going to be the first measure. And I'll just read through. For youth credential, we did not pass this measure as a state. We had 579 people in the measure, 246 passed or showed as positive. That's an actual performance of 42.49% on a goal of 52%. We were at 81.71% achieved on the goal. We had to be at least 90% for USD Wall to say you passed this measure. So I took a moment and looked at this particular measure and compared to program 22. So there's a little good news, bad news, but still in the end, we did pass the measure. So the good news is for youth, we had more people in this measure than we did in the previous program. So that's good. And in the previous program year, we passed at, we were at 91.53% of the goal. We're at 47.59% actual on a goal of 52%. So we passed the measure last year. But last program year, we had 374 people in our denominator, people in the goal. So we served more people, we connected more people with credential programs. Good. But percentage-wise, not as many percentage-wise across the finish line. But more than the previous program year. 178 were in the numerator versus 246. So some of the challenges, I was talking with one of our board administrators, just kind of leading up to talking here. And one of the nuances regarding credential attainment is if an individual, the credential they receive is a high school diploma or equivalent. In order to show a positive in that numerator, not only do you have to have a diploma in the system, you also have to have either continued training or wages. So there's a dual requirement if a person gets a diploma or a recognized equivalency. So with youth, we serve a lot of youth with diploma and equivalent equivalency with that. On top of that, we know youth are probably, we have the most challenges connecting with them and following up. And those are some of the systemic challenges we have with that Title I population, I'd say. So those are some of the challenges there. Any questions? I'll just throw it out for questions. Any questions you want to know more about this measure during this time period? I'm more than happy to drill down, provide you guys with further data to understand a little bit more what's behind that performance. And we can do that. Anytime you have a question regarding data, performance, who we're serving, men versus women, age groups, any demographic breakouts, if we can pull it, we can make a request for it. And we'd be happy to provide it. Josh and I, Chair Roscoe and I are probably going to be communicating about giving some weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, regularly scheduled data out of our performance management regarding all of this good stuff to just help keep you guys current and informed on where things are. And you can ask, that may garner other questions, but we absolutely can supply this board with that information. It's so important.
Are you seeing differences between the out of school youth versus the in school youth in terms of how far have you drilled down into that?
I personally haven't drilled down to that. You know, and some of that conversation would happen with myself, or you know, we look at the performance, but then it's also to look at the youth program coordinator at a state level, and then we would just kind of collaborate and go from there. But I don't have it. Yeah, thank you.
You mentioned the dual requirement as a challenge. What were some of the other challenges?
Just serving youth is it's just harder. They're I think they navigate life differently than people who are older. who have established work, or, you know, they're dislocated, they have a home. You know, their lives maybe just take more, not random, but, you know, they can change course more quickly, and they, you know, this is the last thing on their priority list, as it would be for a lot of people. It's like, oh, get them their diploma, I don't know, I seem to not be dying, and they move on with life, you know, that's part of it, I think. You know, and that's a question that I think, I definitely don't have the why to, and when we talk with each local workforce board, how they're serving youth and what they're seeing on the ground is a lot more relevant than what I think is just a common challenge. that we go.
We do have a lot of great program folks in the audience here, so I just invite, and I can't see many, but I think Veronica Alonso is here, and if anybody else from the locals wants to join us here at the table, this is the most in-depth discussion we've had of data since I've been here, and it's a little unfair to ask the data guys for the deep program questions, but they're great questions. I don't want them to go unanswered, so we would invite anyone who wants to join us up here to help take these questions. Thank you.
All right, we got Deputy Secretary Martinez, thank you. Beth, and we have Art.
Did you want to take a crack at that? Scott, go ahead.
Yeah. Youth is, I mean, anybody that's known me for more than a minute knows that the youth programs are my passion. And so I want to defend the programs and answer the question on why it's so much more challenging. The youth that are targeted within these youth programs are your borderline and disenfranchised youth. These are the ones that have not fit systemically with the mainstream school system or whatever. So these are individuals, and I always hate to use the word barrier. You know, they come into us for help, and then we tell them we have to have barriers. So, but ultimately that is what it is. They have multiple challenges to overcome. And then oftentimes there is a lack of support. You know, they go from one friend's couch to another, because for whatever reason, they can't be home right now. And so in that two-part measure, you got to keep them stable long enough for them to attain that credential and then receive the placement for them to receive the credit for that measure. And so yes, we did not meet the measure, as Michael said, this year, but we did increase the numbers served, and it's all a stepping stone. And it's very important to me as a local board member that this board, or as a local board representative, that this board recognize that when you or the local boards make changes to these youth programs, you're not going to see the impact of those changes for 18 months, 2 years, because the data lag, those wage gains and everything else. So if we're making changes today, don't expect it to show up on next quarter's report. I just want to make sure that it's I'm passionate about that youth program.
And I think every board is, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Did you guys have anything else to add?
Well, I think, you know, what Beth has said is absolutely correct. They are the most difficult to serve. However, we have changed some things in regards to work experience. It's just, we are pushing people not just to get work experience for the sake of work. We're looking at moving towards careers and working with our partners, also with the pre-apprenticeship and some of the apprenticeship programs. And then also, we will also are targeting them, although we're doing the high school equivalency for those that need it. But we're also targeting that they go to school first before we give them some type of work experience. So we're looking at more of an internship and an apprenticeship type of process. So yeah, you're going to see those problems with those, but I think it helps us when we move that in that direction by introducing education and then work, right? I think that's helpful, and I think you look at our numbers, and they've always been pretty decent. But the credentials are a difficult one, and also the skills. Those are difficult for us to continue to move forward in that direction and get the positive. But if you look at them, life has gotten in the way, or issues in life have gotten in the way of these individuals to be successful.
Yeah, and there's so many possible variables. Inflation supporting the household maybe became a more relevant, activity that'd be a big going on.
And then also
Yeah.
look at in school versus out of school,
Yeah.
right? You have that particular impact. And again, that direction we're trying to change with the CT programs to, again, look for work experience for those that have chosen a career, so for those in school. And again, look, we think we don't know what those changes have done to us yet. We will know, I think next quarter or next year, we'll have a significant data analysis to see was that a proper change? I believe it is, because we want to concentrate on careers versus just work experience, although there are individuals that just require work experience in order to get moving in that direction also. And then, but those are going to affect your quarter 2, quarter 4, because they might get work experience and then go to school, right? As long as you don't exit them. Then some of these individuals could stay in the program for 2 to 3 years. And I think that's important to see.
Yeah,
Until the changes you make come further down.
No, and I'm just gonna add, this is why I asked specifically about drilling down on the out of school info, because I recognize, there are 4 different regional workforce boards. But I guess I'll only speak for, this is one of the places where we do see that tension is how well we're able to track and move forward with versus the out of school. And I know just, so like, I'm just about to get myself in trouble in terms of that data, but so understanding how it looks throughout the entire state.
Yes, and over time, in the past, there has been, when service providers are changed, that impacts performance and and the continued service to participants, youth participants in there. We do our best to mitigate it, but changing service providers, changing, the people they see every day, and that can have an impact on performance. All right. Yes.
I've got a question for you when you're ready.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Brent Davis. So, being a data geek that I am, when I look at this one in particular, my question for you is seeing the low on the credential, but seeing the skill gains and knowing that the skill gains are, one is an educational functional level, there's 2 transcript oriented ones, and then there's training milestones. Is this telling me that the youth side of this house are gaining the skills and what I would call skill and training milestone progression, but there's not a pursuit of education? Does my question make sense?
It does make sense. Now, let's talk about these 2 measures.
Hold on, let me take that.
Go ahead.
Max is answering.
Plug in.
So the answer to that question is, with the measurable skills gains, there are the 5 categories. The requirement that we're talking about.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're a legend around here.
I'm Marguerite Aragon. Everyone knows me as Max. I was in Michael's position. I'm Michael's supervisor. I'm the the compliance manager for.
I knew who you were.
So the answer to the question is, out of those 5 types of gains that you can get, one thing that's affecting it is when Michael was talking about a high school diploma or an HSE, the requirement that you have to have employment or be enrolled in education. That is not a requirement for a positive in the skills gain. So that's a big thing that's going to be affecting it. The other thing that's affecting it is since you're looking at, since a lot of the measures, the EFL, I'm kind of throwing that out of the way because we don't have a lot of EFL kind of gains. We're not seeing a lot of skills gains with educational functioning levels. We are seeing, so if you look at the transcripts, if they have enough credits to complete a year's worth, that counts as a gain. So a year's worth of credits as defined by the Department of Education. So, or you can split it up into half semesters, and there's a whole technical thing with that. But basically, if they have enough credits to move forward, that counts as a gain. So we can get transcripts, and then there's milestones that we can get for transcripts. So if someone is in, and I know this is wrong, but someone's in an OJT and they've made progress. So say they have 5 skills they've been identified, but they only make progress and they've become proficient in one of those skills, that one skill counts as a gain. So the threshold for gain is lower than the threshold for credential, which makes the gains easier to meet. The other thing to say about the gains, and this goes across adult dislocated worker and youth, but specifically youth, New Mexico, when you look at the data and how our skills gains are distributed across the 5, we have a pretty good distribution between the 5. If you look at the data, and I've had some conversations with our federal performance officer, because he's asked me why this happens. A lot of the states, they're only showing 1 gain, they're only capturing 1 gain. And in New Mexico, our regions, our boards are capturing a variety of gains, and that's helping us out for this measure. So that's really what's affecting these gains measures.
And just keep in mind,
Yeah, because this is,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'd say this is the data elements 1806 through 1810 or 11. I can't remember, but my question was twofold, Mags. Was one, and you've answered some of that. Is there a reason that's dragging the credential down? And then the second, obviously, a lot of the EFLs or the transcript report cards really represent a greater time investment of the I'll call it the student or the candidate. But the milestones are achievable in a working environment. I was just curious whether we were seeing, I'm going to say, the upside of gaining the skills, even though we weren't doing the education, because you see a decent mark on the earnings side.
Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, and with Mr. Davis, is credential is a time lag measure. Skill gain, credential is based on an exit date. Skill gain is real time. There is no exit date. We're still serving these people. Completely different group of people by and large. The potential, there may be some in the same, but by and large, an exit has to happen for credential to be in the math. So,
okay.
So yeah, just know that there may be some overlap there between who's in the denominator of skill gain, but skill gain is a real-time measure, measured quarter to quarter as they move through a training program. So they're still participating with the skill.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
So, real quick, so we can move on to the next slide. Is that denominator number, you look at the total units, would you say that for each of those 4 categories, that denominator is the universal unit? And if it's not, how would you find or estimate the number?
For some of those, it is. I'm sorry, this is Bethany. If you want me to take my.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Bethany with the Eastern Board. For some of those measures, it is. But you have certain triggers. For skill things, everyone falls in that measure. There is no exclusion. For the credential measure, there are certain activities that trigger inclusion into that measure. And the same thing happens with the employment measures. That the employment measures, in my opinion, the time frames that Michael mentioned earlier are falling different.
I guess, yeah. Good.
The date ranges that apply to each measure make it difficult to tell a universe, because the quarter 4, Max, do you know the dates off the top of your head for quarter 4?
The cohort exit dates,
I think
I actually pulled that because I know we have.
We anticipated this question.
I anticipated something one time. So to give you an idea, for employment quarter 4, we're looking at people who had exited the system and were considered part of this measure from January 1st of 2022 to December 31st of 2022.
And it's different.
Yeah.
It's different. It's still.
That's a total universe. I look at the definition of this. Not really capturing the data, all of the youth out there actually don't.
Now, the youth that you see here are participants connected to this funding. Yeah.
But I don't know what that number is, what the number on this would be for sure. I think it was the last legislative session or the one before, there was like of individuals 18 to 24 in the state were neither in school or in work. So we're not touching them. Anyway.
You know,
So,
it's
so
a good question.
understanding that's where we're missing, but I don't know what the number is.
No, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's a lot more youth out there than we serve, frankly, you know, and that's just, that goes for a dislocated worker, you know. But you know, it's a good question to understand who's in that denominator.
Is from a business engagement committee. What they found in relationship to, looking at that universe, and saying that we can get the business community, get engaged with this right work on something. You know, the apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship programs. Would that be an ideal for the union was?
I think it's.
Accessible, if you get to it, and identify it. Usually questions I'd like to pick up later. So just think about that.
No, absolutely. I think if you have a big business engagement initiative, it should have a perspective where it collaborates with Title I adult dislocated worker and youth, because they each serve a little different population, a little different facet of the customer. But it would be so important to, you're out there with the employment community to, it can just, it can come together and, you know, these initiatives begin to talk together and work in concert with each other. And we have to do more and more of that. So.
I know where you saw in case you the business engagement community,
I think it's also worth sharing. I mean, the increased number of youth served is quite commendable, given everything that's just been shared. And you've got a lot of industries around this table that are all trying to figure out how to tackle youth engagement. So the challenge is it's helpful just to have a conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, it is very commendable because nationwide, they have seen a decrease in the number served by WIOA funds. So to see an increase in number served is definitely something should be recognized.
Do you get data nationwide, but also regionally, and how New Mexico stacks up?
Yes.
That,
I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but I do have it in the statistical model, how we rank among all states across all measures. So yeah, we have that. You guys want a presentation on that? Bring a pillow. Actually, it is interesting. We kind of have nerdy folk in here, so it may be very interesting for you, engaging. Any further questions? Oh, let me walk through the rest of the slide. Scott, I'm sorry.
If I may, I think one thing you need to consider for these coming years is the youth program took quite a big of a hit on funding this last year. And I can speak for the central region. We lost 14% of funding for the youth program, and so that's going to have an impact of who we serve and how many we serve, because they are expensive to. From a service perspective, it is expensive to serve, and those costs. It's just something to keep forward. So if we look for funding, it should be to address the situation.
Exactly. That's absolutely a reality. Funding. I do want to read through this slide as I did not.
Scott, did you have?
Scott, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a little of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Roginski, Deputy Secretary. Just a few considerations of state context is that there's a 75% approximately high school graduation rate in New Mexico, and it hasn't declined, but there are quite a few states that are higher than ours in that regard, and the state is one of the highest chronic absenteeism rate. So there are some structural challenges, I think, though the state is doing a really positive job as far as implementing the Attendance for Success Act, and also adding funding to those initiatives, and it is also implementing school districts recognize some very strong evidence-based policies. So I think there's a lot of positive movement, but I think it's important both in school and out of school textual factors, or as far as students not getting their diploma. And Art made the great point earlier about the CTE programs, because the data also revealed when students are engaged in CT or the concentrators, they tend to graduate and get their diploma a lot more. So not sure if there's a specific time of the day, some sort of broad context of New Mexico.
Okay, and that's good to know in terms from the education perspective that is your background, that's your specialty. See that. Any other questions here? I do want to read through the remainder of the slide for a moment, and if you do have other questions after I finish those words, we'd be happy to take them. Other than that, we'll move forward. So for the audience here, for employment second quarter after exit, for youth, we had 918 in the measure. 667 showed positive for an actual performance of 72.66% on a goal of 66%, for 110.09% achieved on the goal. For fourth quarter employment after exit, 1,008 in the measure, 703 were showing positive for a performance of 69.74%, actual performance on a goal of 65%, which is 107.3% of the goal. Measurable skill gain, 769 in the measure, 442 showing positive to that measure for a performance of 54.88% on a goal of 51%. And that was 107.6% of the goal. Lastly, median earnings for youth is $3,700. And the actual is $5,717.75, which is 154.53% of median earnings goal. Ready. All right, I think we're going to move forward here. We will look at employment services, known as Wagner Pfizer and career services. Okay, passing all measures here. Employment quarter two, we do have 21,247 in the measure, 14,034. We're showing wages second quarter after exit, 66.045% actual performance on a goal of 60.3%. And that is 109.5% of negotiated goal. Fourth quarter after exit, 11,000 and scratch that, 17,196 in the measure, 11,040 showing wages fourth quarter after exit for an actual performance of 64.2% on a goal of 60%. And that is 107% of the stated goal. Median earnings, we do have a goal of $5,570, and we performed at $8,849 and a dime. So we exceeded that measure at 158.76% of the stated goal. And anybody need further information on employment services? Well, I'm going to give it to you anyway, even if you didn't say it out loud. I didn't give you enough time to even say that. Just for your information, we have our workforce connection centers. Scratch that, they're American job centers around the state. I almost made a father. And if somebody is underemployed or looking for work, or they just happen to walk in the door and want to know about jobs, Wagner Pfizer Employment Services are the ones who serve those people. They could be veterans, they could be anybody. Universal service, we help anyone who's underemployed, overemployed, whoever they are, wherever they come from, we serve them in helping them find work. If they get a certain level of resume assistance, they're in that denominator, and we'd look to see if they found work after we help them. So just a little context for that. This employment service does not pay to retrain somebody. That's why it's a different title than Title I. So, all right. Any questions on employment services? Okay. We made it through the hard stuff. Now we're going to talk about where we landed with the feds for program year 24 and 25. So we can just move to the next slide here. These negotiations happened, I don't know, May. I can't remember now. Just for reference, this is for the adult program. I do have each of the measures listed in the same order. For your reference, the blue column is program year 22 and 23, where we were sitting for those years, and what it moved to for 24 and 25. I'll walk through the slide, and if we have questions regarding those numbers, we will talk. All right. So for adult credential, we moved from 64% to 70% for that measure. We have been performing at 70% or above for this measure, and USDOL was right there with us. On that measure, I think it's very attainable. We'll probably exceed it. Don't quote me on any of that last part. All right, don't jinx it. But we've been performing well in that measure. Employment, second quarter after exit, we were at 76%. They moved us to 81%. And the 81 seems a little high. And I think I talked them down one because I was asked for a little something on negotiation. But looking at that measure, keep in mind, we have to perform at 90% of 81%. And I don't know what that is. I can actually do it. So it's not like that's the bare minimum. That's not the bottom. The bottom would be doing that. So we would have to have at a minimum 72.9% actually employed to pass that measure. So that's part of the negotiation. We look at the ceiling and the bottom on it and find a happy spot. We feel good there. Employment fourth quarter after exit was at 76%. We're at 80% on that. I think I got it come down a point versus quarter two, but we feel like that's very attainable. One jump that we had across all programs, all Title I programs, on skill gain. We definitely are moving up, but I feel like we're okay. For adults, we were at 63.6%. And USDOL really did this with each state in negotiations for measurable skill gain. It was a real new measure. And to understand the 5 methods, case management wise, to get the data entry right, understand the requirements for each was a challenge for states to get everybody in there and get it done correctly. But they feel everyone's kind of in the groove right now, and I believe New Mexico is right there with it. So we went from 63.6 to 70.5, which is, almost a 6.9% gain there. So respectable, but attainable. We feel like we're okay there. Okay, median earnings. We went from 8,000 to 9,600. You saw a lot of our median earnings numbers above 11,000. And as time gone on, wages have gone up. We should be real safe at 9,600. So any questions on these numbers? Okay, we're going to move to dislocated worker. All right, so rinse and repeat, dislocated worker credential. We went from 61% to 68.5%. Feel good there. Second quarter employment, 70.4% to 73.5%. Fourth quarter went from 71.3% to 73.5%. Skill gain, 62% to 75.5%. And I talked it down. That's fine. But I think for dislocated worker, my thoughts are we may not have all the great 100+ percentages on percent achieved, but I think it's definitely achievable. The thing to keep in mind with dislocated worker as a program, it serves less people. So small moves in your positives or negatives have a bigger percentage impact on performance percentages. And, case managing those individuals to an intensive degree with, we don't suffer on the performance, but that's just the nature of the beast. The less you serve, the higher little performance moves matter, percentage-wise. Median earnings, we moved from $7,850 to $8,898. I feel very good at that number. Without any question there. Any questions? I think we're hitting our performance knowledge threshold. This is good, but there's not a lot of questions to ask here. All right, moving to youth. Youth credential, we kept level at 52%. It was an honest conversation during our negotiations. We had challenges in the last program year with this measure. And we all came to an agreement, 52%, we really don't want to step down from or approach 50% or less for a measure. Then I think programmatically, we have some questions we have to ask ourselves. So we kept it level, at 52%. Employment Q2 went from 66% to 70%. Employment Q4 went from 65% to 73.5%. Skill gain 51% to 55%. And median earnings went from $3,700 to $4,855. For the wage-based measures, we have to perform. It's definitely achievable. I don't think, as long as we pay attention to what we're doing and how it's going, we should be good. So, any questions on these numbers here? I think we're good. All right, we'll move to employment services, Wagner Pfizer, and career services, all the same thing. All right, here we go. So one thing you'll notice is there's only three. It is career services, so there's no training, there's no measuring of skill gain because that's not what we do with employment services. So for employment services, second quarter, we went from 60.3 to 63%. And for fourth quarter employment, we went from 60% to 63%. And for median earnings, $5,574 to $7,170. And I feel we shouldn't have achieved that. So, any questions for employment services? It's good there. All right, so let's move to our last little yellow bullet point. So we're going to talk about where we are with local workforce board performance negotiations in that process. We're in the midst of that process, so we can go ahead and click to the.
Sorry, we're trying it, like, it's
okay.
going crazy.
I trust your clickiness. For your.
I gave Carla that job. I don't know.
I like how you delegate blame.
Oh, sorry.
Now you're overdoing it, Carla. All right, overperforming. All righty. So just and I'll reference this lightly. We do, factors in what we do in negotiating performance with each local board is we're going to ask, I look at each board's individual past performance. I look at the weight, how many individuals, were served in the previous program year, weight-wise across each board. It varies. Central is always usually close to 50% on many of these measures. There is a statistical model that we use to help guide. It is not a super accurate guide as it's a statewide statistical model. We are in the midst of developing a local statistical model where each board can plug in their numbers and we'll give them an accurate number back. This year, last negotiation, we attempted to plug in local numbers to the New Mexico model, and it just spit out wrong numbers. So wrong data, and rather than send out something that was wrong, we sent out what we knew was right, even though it is narrowed down to a board. By the time we have performance negotiations, again, for after 25, we will have a local, and we can hone in exactly and give good numbers that way, or have more accurate negotiations that way. Okay, all righty. We also talk about service strategies. If they're looking at serving a hard to serve population, those who are reentry populations coming back into society, if there is a focus of serving more individuals with that, we know that has a negative impact on performance. And that's the kind of the crux of the thing is, well, if it has a negative impact on your performance, maybe you shouldn't serve those people, which is the wrong thing to do. But in negotiations, that is a factor in coming to a level of negotiated level of performance that is real. So, or it hopefully will, if those individuals are served, and we know certain populations being served or focused on through service strategy, we try and account for that as best we can. All right, so for your information, the big state number I put up there, and we just went through all the comparison slides, that's the state number. Each local board will have their own level that's appropriate for them based on weight. As a state, it's all got to roll up to that one state number for us to pass as a state. So that's the art of the exercise, is making sure we're okay. And after all boards have negotiated and that becomes part of the negotiation, depending on if you're first at the table or last at the table and all that good stuff, but, right now, where we are at is I am awaiting the proposed levels of performance from each board. Each board is aware that those are due on September 6th. After I receive those, even if it's before that, we will schedule the local board negotiations. And that will include the lead CEO of each board, the administrator, and the board chair, along with myself, probably Mags, Veronica, and probably Michelle Velarde from Employment Services. So we all sit down and have an effective negotiation. And once we have all 4 done, which has to be done by October 1st, then we're good for the next 2 program years. Any questions on local negotiations or process things? All righty. With that, thank you for your time. If you have any other questions, contact me. I don't have my email up there, but if you know someone, they know someone who knows me.
I can't do it.
So thank you for your time and questions. Oh, Carla.
Question about like funding per average, person. So if in all of the Title I adult dislocated worker youth, going back to Art's point that it costs more to service youth, which makes sense. But do we have that information, the per person average funding to either credential or case management in these?
Yes. So the answer is yes. And that actually, program year 23 just concluded. So again, more process than we should probably talk about. What I'm going to say is that when I certify the annual report, which has to be certified by October 1st, I actually have to put in amounts expended, numbers served, and all that. And it does a calculation, cost per participant.
Gotcha.
So we do report it and we have it, but not yet right now for 23. Yeah.
It'll be available October 1st, because that's when we certify our annual report. So it's only calculated annually. It does show up on the annual report narrative. It'll be the actual document and narrative form of it on December 1st, when that's done. But if you want it after October 1st, that's when it's calculated, and it's calculated a few different ways. With admin included, without admin dollars. So it's calculated a few different ways. So you can look at it.
You can drill it down
Yeah.
different ways. Okay.
Yes.
Something I'm taking away from the interest of the board with this is I think we want to see more data. And to your point, Carla, I think maybe the next dive, maybe dive's not the right word, but next presentation with data might be some of our understanding our funding. And so it's perfectly timed for when that report is going to be due. We can go over that at our next meeting. So look at some of the questions that you bring up and just kind of see over the time how that funding has been, because I know it's kind of been dropping. So just so that we're aware of how that works. Greg.
Yes, Chair, I just wanted to offer to coordinate with DVR. I think we should do a presentation on the data for Title IV, the vocational rehabilitation programs here in New Mexico at some future meeting. Be happy to do a similar presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. I'm putting that in my notes. I'm coming up with ideas for data that we can look at.
Just a quick idea. I would just say to suggest the same for Title II adult education. We could do it, quickly and show some interesting things, I think. And then in terms of like another presentation, I'd love to see comparisons regionally and nationally, and then over time as well for us. It'd be interesting to see how we're, improving them.
Yeah, we can definitely look at performance trends over time, and we can slice and dice data a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So we will probably start broad, and then it'll be, this is interesting, let's go there, if we kind of see a weirdness with some data and understand the why behind some of the trends. Absolutely. All right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. It is just about 3. Yes. And also I really do appreciate everybody with all your questions. I want to give you more stuff that makes you interested and I heard it in a presentation today, more data leads to better questions. So hopefully we can do more of that. It is about 3, and I was informed that we have our interpreter until 3:30. So We're gonna try to get through the rest of the meeting, in 30 minutes, if that's all right. So with that, moving on to our subcommittee updates. Let's start off with Carla.
First, we're small, but we're mighty. Policy committee, really hit the ground running. We've been meeting since the beginning of the year. Committee members, Greg Trapp, Brent Davis, Rebecca Estrada, myself, with the expertise from Workforce Solutions, we're very appreciative from Mags and Michael Yang, Deputy Secretary Reginski, and the glue and ringleader that really held everything together, Veronica Alonso, who steered us in the direction. For sake of time, we have been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 policies, all of which the board has reviewed at some point, the most recent, obviously, and ratified now, right, the ETPL and Open Meetings Act and data validation. Because of the pressing matter to review the policies and get them to the board, we kind of went backwards, where we didn't go to our vision, mission, and goals of the policy committee. We kind of knew what they were, and it was to get policies reviewed to the board as quickly as possible. So, I know we will be taking kind of a step back and then working through that vision, mission, and goals for the policy committee, because I know that it does incorporate some of the stuff that the other committees are working on. But really, in the meantime, we've been tracking right along. So.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Very big thank you. All those votes that we've taken has probably been hours each for each one. Thank you.
I didn't know what I was doing when I.
The ETPL by itself was, what do you think, ETPL was what, like 5 or 6 meetings? Like,
It was once a
an
week
hour
for
and
a
a half.
while, yeah.
Wow.
Thank you very much for that. All right, moving on to Mathis and our business engagement.
Sure, so we've been meeting once a month since the beginning of the year, switched back to that the business engagement committee connected. Challenging to get the corporation, the businesses to waste their time on this, but with the help of the push that we got during the spring, particularly with Karen's help from UWS, Michelle's and support, we've actually had quite a few meetings with some. We got our goals and mission and vision all organized, and pretty much we took from that, and I'll leave the mission very quickly because you'll all recognize it. Obviously, from the combined state plan, section 3A1, page 86. Anyway, so to support development, execution of statewide sector strategy deployment, with a focus on employer engagement to evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, gaps, employability of the New Mexico workforce. And as Kelly and I got talking, and I'm on Kelly's committee, it's realized that there was a lot of overlap in activity between the two. So I'll leave it to Kelly to bring up some of those aspects, but we're very excited about the opportunity to look at our vision, mission, goals, and how those connect in and complement each other. And then Carlos, I can't say what the policy can be, but I'm scared. What you guys do over there.
It's not that scary. We're really fun. You should join us. Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't decide. But I would like to get on the data side. If we can with this kind of discussion that Dave does. So, but anyway, so our goals will right off the state plan 1, goal 1, goal 2 in terms of the sectors, the sector approach. Our goal is not, our focus is not to kind of boil the ocean, if you would. We want to focus. So in doing so, what we want to do is focus on those kind of relevant sectors that we think can demonstrate the pathway and the way forward, pulling off the way that we should do. So I look at it in terms of priorities, the aerospace space, well, healthcare and first responders would be that first goal. That's goal well as the community. Then the second goal is around more of the EDD sector strategies, so we're focusing on aerospace, energy transition, bioscience, and then those Space Nexus, Space Valley, PACA organizations on the committee. And then, the State of Clean Tech Conference coming up in September down at MSU. They're very excited about this. I'm very excited. Investment. And so particularly the Department of Energy support serve for those programs. And then John Shion. And then the Bioscience Authority, Gail was not here in person today, but he is on the committee and they're talking about people right now. So we'll have the agenda, we'll go through those things. But first, action items right now, coordinating Kelly, make sure the committees are connected. Number two, we'll be setting the schedule. Karen, in more of these meetings, we've got over 25 entities now. Gone through the calculation of what that looks like. And there's a lot of workforce, government, and nonprofit. We're also pulling in construction, access, aerospace, data centers, agriculture. We're pulling those entities. Maybe one thing I found is that we're not going to get those companies to use their percent. And so we're able to put out there and bring the individuals, and they can rotate with it. And depending on the topic and the food of that particular meeting, it might be the facilities time, it might be the workforce time, it might be this is the one. But we're going to have the able to present it in one way or another. That's just one example. Again, that's the system. So stop there. I do want to say that this presentation is extremely helpful. I'm thinking about the way this is the way we try to start using an initiative that brings in their corporate activity, corporate support, in some of the programs we're doing, given the track record that we've got today in the United States. From a company's perspective, efficiency, accountability, return on investment, all key items, and we can demonstrate the return on investment now, then we can get that started. So stop there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, Carlos, our data and performance.
Yes, hello, everyone. And I'm sad to report that we have not met as a committee, in spite of some good intentions and in spite of a lot of thinking. But maybe today's presentation is motivation to huddle with Michael and Mags about where we go from here. But I'll tease you with a few ideas that we've already kind of started to discuss. I live my life and I run my business by the mantra, context gives meaning to data. Data without context is meaningless. And we saw some of that bubbling up. And I think the things that are bubbling up are just something Beth mentioned around stability, right? It's like, how are we really measuring stability? I mean, Scott mentioned chronic absenteeism. I think that's one indicator of instability in families. So I'm really curious about the context of behind these numbers, the story behind these numbers, and how that might influence our big ideas. Like what are the theories of change that we have around how we're going to move those needles? So I hope we can dive in and build on this conversation, but really figure out the context, figure out the big idea, and use that data to be a little more ambitious, I think, and creative in how we might do things. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now, but. Yeah,
all right, thank you. Now over to Kelly.
All right. Actually, I have a little handout for everybody. So, sense of what we've accomplished in the 5 or 6 meetings we've currently had today. I want to thank first and foremost Deputy Secretary Scott Wiginski. Thank you so much for wrangling us, keeping us on target. I want to thank Rebecca, Carla, Amber, and Mathis for serving on the committee. There are 2 other committee members that are outside of the State Workforce Development Board. Those individuals are Scott Lopez, which I think most of you may know, and Jamae, who is with Innovate Educate. We look forward to growing that committee, and in large part due to synergy we find with the other subcommittees. We've made some pretty good progress, as you'll kind of see outlined. We've got a great vision, mission, and some goals. The vision and the mission are obviously consistent with the New Mexico Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, the state plan. The 6 goals we have, again, are consistent with the state plan, and those goals focus around economic and workforce analysis, enhanced coordination, collaboration, and communication, improved assessments, credentialing. Now, there are sub-goals to all of these. So really, in the 5 meetings we've had, it's been pretty impressive. We've had a lot of very robust discussion. They have been very thoughtful, smart goals and sub goals. So as we work to finalize these, I think the next phase is how do we deliver on the measurables of these goals? Most importantly, how do we deliver on the measurables as we introduce other entities, other partners, stakeholders in connection with how we collaborate with our subgroups? Because I think that's what we've started to find is there's a lot of crossover, obviously, a lot of pollination. We want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So we're trying to figure out, as Mathis has mentioned, where we can have some joint meetings. So we've done good work thus far. I'm excited to move it forward. Anything, my fellow city members want to add?
Would add, and I found those meetings to be very confident. They help a lot, and as I informed, some of the finer details of business engagement.
I should say, obviously, all of this will be in connection with the priority sectors identified as far as industry sectors go. And that I think everything we've discussed and talked about has been with a focus on future-minded workforce and cross-pollination, not solely ideology-driven of any of us within our own industries, but really truly trying to move forward as a collective effort.
Thank you, Kelly.
I would just echo again, those so Scott Lopez and Janine Merlin really brought a really good, lens. That made us sometimes think about things we weren't thinking about, so it's always good to make sure that we have those fusion.
And I would encourage too, that if you find people in the committee that are not, in the community that are not part of the board, feel free to add them if you think they'll be of value. I hope, and it seems it's going this way, that you're finding these committees as an opportunity to have these conversations, get a little more deep into some of the things that we want to talk about. Because it's so very difficult to do that here. All of us have lives, we need to get going. So I'm hopeful that the committees are allowing for some of those deeper discussions. So. All right, let's move on to WIOA partner updates. Secretary.
So I asked for this to be added because, this isn't just the sort of Title I, Title III board, this is a board for the whole workforce system. And so today we have with us Title II and Title IV representatives that we get updates from, and then I'll give ours from GWS, and then hopefully in the future we'll have some more partners. Whoever wants to start, Director Cal?
Certainly. Title IV is vocational rehabilitation, which is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and the Commissioner for the Blind. We did submit our combined state plans. That went well. I really appreciate folks working on that. Our performance measures, real briefly, I'm not going to do an hour and a half on that. We are meeting our performance measures. We work with the Rehabilitation Services Administration to negotiate those. Casey Stone Romero and myself participated yesterday on the plenary panel. I thought that went well. A really great workforce conference, and in the interest of time, Secretary, that's before, at least my part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I have maybe just 5 minutes. Veronica, can you help me with that?
Pulling it up
Oh,
now.
thank you so much. I just have a few slides, just to help me talk a little bit here. I won't go over some of them, but wanted to just say, so adult education is Title II. We do adult literacy and academic skills, high school equivalency in the state, English proficiency, also known as ESL. And then we also do career training, which a lot of people aren't aware of. And Deputy Secretary Ginsky asked me to speak a little bit about what we do in regards to career training today, which our model is called integrated educational training. Next slide, please. And before I jump into IET.
Sorry, we're working on it.
Let's be,
Oh, no.
before I jump, one back.
Oh, sorry.
Before I jump into IET, I just wanted to take the opportunity really, in adult education, we serve about 11,000 people a year. That's been going up every year in the state. And I think it's important that we all just sort of understand the importance of these sort of services to New Mexico. We are ranked 50th in the nation in adult literacy rates, people who have the lowest levels of literacy. We are number 46 in attainment of high school diploma and high school equivalency, and 49th in number of people who have very low levels of English language proficiency. So that's important to note, not because I want to drag us down, but because it's an opportunity to really see that so many of these people are our workforce. These adults are our workforce, and that's what makes the services that we're providing, the career training services, really important for our state. I think this is a group we often forget. We think a lot about kids, about youth, but sometimes we just kind of withdraw resources and attention once it comes to adults. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think it's something to keep in mind as we move forward with all the things that we do. It's not just children, it's also all the adults in our state as well. So next slide, please. Okay, so we have a model called Integrated Education and Training. I refer to it as IET. It's a new push in the state. We've been doing it for a few years, but this is a significant change, a significant difference now in this last year and going forward, and how we're rolling it out and the resources that we're putting into it. Next slide, please. The definition of IET is actually in WIOA. This is the definition right here. I won't read it for you. You can read it there, but I think there's some things to keep in mind here. Basically, an IET program is a situation in which you've got adults going through adult education. So you have to be enrolled in adult education in order to participate in an IET. But the eligibility requirements are pretty broad for adult education. But you need to be, people are typically working towards their high school equivalency. If they're not quite there, they don't have a high school diploma quite yet, or they're improving their English language proficiency. So they're doing that, and simultaneously, they're also doing workforce preparation. So things along the lines of, resume building, soft skill building, things of that nature. And then simultaneously with that, they're actually doing career training towards a specific credential or for an occupation or an occupational cluster. We'll talk about that in a second. So a good example to make this clear is the Certified Nursing Assistant, CNA IET. This is a really popular IET around the state in our adult education programs. And so we've got students who are taking adult education courses, towards their high school equivalency, but those courses are all contextualized in the frontline healthcare occupational cluster. Okay? So they're learning math and English and science, but in that context with those materials, which is really cool. Then they're also doing workforce preparation for those frontline healthcare careers. So talking to patients' families, for example, diffusing difficult situations. And then at the same time, they're actually taking courses for the CNA certificate. So ideally, by the end of this, 9-month program or 10-month program, they've got their high school equivalency, and they are a certified CNA. And then, of course, we provide wraparound services to help them move in. And it's not only we that provide wraparound services, really through digging into IET more and really trying to build this system, I've seen sort of, I guess I would call it sort of the beauty of WIOA, that we do have to work together, all of the different titles. We need to work with Title I, we need to work with Title IV, or people won't be successful. So this is a nice way to, I don't know, it's a nice kind of demonstration project for what WIOA is supposed to be. I think it's kind of cool. Next slide, please. I basically said most of this, but this is a national program that has that we've been pulling out of the state. It's very intense, it's rigorous, it's a little bit on the expensive side for different reasons. But these simultaneous three components always have to be present. Next slide, please. We have a new policy and a new application at the state. So we're trying to, even though we've had some programs already, we're trying to make sure that they're rigorous and they're high quality. And so our programs have to apply to do this. And now we're doing some oversight of them. And the thing I want to emphasize for you all, one of the things is the approved outcomes. So there's 3 approved outcomes that we have decided we approve in New Mexico. One of them is that industry recognized credential. So for example, that's CNA, right? But there are also, we can also approve 2 or more stackable credentials. So, when we say industry recognized credential, you get this credential, you could conceivably get a job in that industry with that credential. But a stackable is more like OSHA 10 or CPR, combining several stackable credentials as well together, usually one on their own. You can't get an OSHA 10 and go get a job, right, in construction. But with a few together, you might be able to access an entry-level career. So stackable credentials are a possibility. And then the third, which I really wanted to emphasize to you all, is that we put in the third approved outcome is to enter a registered apprenticeship program with preference. So one thing I really want to emphasize to this group here is that the IET model, again, this national model, is built to the same standards as the quality pre-apprenticeship model. So we can use the IET model to create pre-apprenticeships. The only difference between a pre-apprenticeship and an IET is that the pre-apprenticeship would have that MOU with the registered apprenticeship program to guarantee preference if somebody successfully completes the IET pre-apprenticeship program. So pre-apprenticeships in general are a really good way that folks from marginalized communities who may not be able to access those registered apprenticeship programs very successfully, it's a way to help them do that. And that also benefits the industry because you get a more diverse workforce. You're able to recruit people from different communities that you need to be successful as an industry. Obviously, this is really beneficial for our learners, less time in school, they leave with a credential that they can use. And of course, you can see how it meets employer needs as well. So next slide, please. We're super excited about this because the legislature has invested in this model. So last year we had 14 programs offering them in FY24. We just approved our 46th application for one. We did a big push last spring, brought all the programs in. We did a design kind of boot camp for IET programs. And now we're moving forward. So we think that there's going to be a lot more this year. Next slide, please. Thanks. So even last year, and again, this is kind of before we did this push, we saw an enrollment increase of about 30%. So at the end of last fiscal year, we had 531 people around the state enrolled in these programs. Next slide, please. Last year, again, before the push, we had 15 different kinds of IET programs offered in FY24. You can see the different kinds here. And also this information is on our website. I'll tell you here in a second where you can find it. Next slide, please. We attained 274 credentials by IET students last year alone, which I think is something to really celebrate. And again, this is before our push, but hopefully even more. Next slide, please. Child development and CNA are among our most popular. And as you can see, we've got a number of IET programs offering them, number of IET programs themselves, and the number of credential types increased by 128% again last year. Next slide, please. I think is our last slide. Yeah. So we are seeing a big change already in the number of IET types. And what I think is really exciting, and the last thing I'll mention, is that we're moving away from some of the more traditional industries or traditional IETs and into some new offerings that include welding, solar technician, dental assistant, and broadband. So I think there's really interesting things, and I'm really hoping that we can partner with folks here. If there's an industry that you think might be a good candidate for an IET in each workplace, perhaps we could work on that a little bit. Again, these are thousands and thousands of people here, so there's a lot of possibilities around the state. That's my contact information. I have my cards here. And would love to answer any questions, or of course, feel free to contact me.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Amber. Okay, moving on to NMDWS updates.
Great, thank you. I'll keep it brief as well. So a couple updates. We have, okay. So we, hopefully you've heard by now, we received the state apprenticeship expansion formula competitive grant for $5.9 million to expand pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship in infrastructure and clean energy. And so that is really exciting, and especially given your new programs, Director Gallup, I think that'll be some great partnerships. And so Scott is the lead sort of on the team here, along with, of course, Katrina in our apprenticeship council. So abilities on that. And then we also received a $1.5 million grant from a private organization called the Families and Workers Fund to take part in the Powering Climate Infrastructure Careers Challenge. I'm trying to remember all these acronyms. And that is to basically help us put together our stakeholder and sector plans for clean energy and climate resilience, or as we call it in our state plan, energy transition and climate resilience. So as most of you know, like we did broadband as sort of our first sector strategy. It is now rapidly becoming apparent that the demand is really to do climate resilience, and that would include energy as the next one. And the PCIC money is going to help us do that. We also Be Pro, Be Proud continues to go right along, and super excited that we this year, towards the end of the summer, when we normally have a lull, we went to all of the minimum security correctional facilities in the state, and that was highly successful. And I really think the team, it took a lot of coordination. We partnered with the Central to get their Chances Grant folks onto that tour so that they could really have a warm handoff right into that program. And then also in the reentry space, we graduated the first class with Janae's group of chefs coming out of the Santa Fe Penitentiary. And I bring that up specifically because the chef we partnered with, Fernando Ruiz, he just opened his new restaurant in Santa Fe, Escondido. So absolutely go visit him. You will know if he is there. He will probably come out because that's who he is. If you see him, please thank him for the partnership. He was absolutely wonderful. And meeting all of those folks and eating their delicious food was great. Since Carl isn't here, I'll mention that the Job Corps had their 60th birthday party earlier this week, and that was really great. They have amazing outcomes. I'll let him tell his story next time he's here. And then also wanted to mention Disability Employment Awareness Month. We're having a big event on October 17th, and really Lisa McNiven from the Governor's Commission on Disability, Director Trepp, Casey, DVR, all those folks have been really engaged, as well as the DWS team. I think last year we announced that it was Disability Employment Awareness Month at this conference, but we didn't really participate this year. Lisa really got us together early so that we could have a really great event that's going to include a hiring event. So I wanted to highlight that for everybody. And lots of other great stuff going on. But finally, I just wanted to say thank you so much to all the members of this board. I mean, when I got here, I think all boards in the state were sort of in the doldrums from having met online, and it just kind of was a win. And I mean, this is so energetic, and the leadership, Josh, that you've shown, and then all the committee chairs and everybody really here has gotten so engaged, and we just really appreciate it because it makes all the WIOA programs better. So thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Moving on to chair and board comments. Do any board members have any comments for us? Yes, Rebecca.
I'll just say I've been to Escondido Go, and the participants in the program are working it. So you get good food and all that goes back. So it's pretty amazing. And then just because I butchered it earlier, and because I think it's important as we think about our work, I just wanted to be accurate that in 2022 in New Mexico, 19.6% of young adult ages 16 through 24 were defined as disconnected, meaning they were not in school, nor were they working. And the national average is 12.6%. So that was from a presentation. And then it's a little bit older data. Hopefully it's different, but Center for American Progress said in 2020 that 19% of 18 to 24-year-olds in New Mexico had neither a high school equivalency or they in school. So understanding that those are, when we're talking about those youth numbers and the challenges.
Thank you. Mathis?
I got one comment. I'd like to say thank you to you, the Secretary, for the support of the committees, the subcommittees that you give us. The resources involved in the trial, and just the engagement that the opportunity to understand several of the big associations that we have in the state. I'm sure Carlos and I will have fun being down walks, getting more into the data this year. But I want to say it's been very helpful. Climate change, one of what we were trying to do is way back then. And I have the resources, I'm gonna shout out Karen, who's done a great job. One of the old points I had that didn't get to is, you mentioned stocks, and I guess Karen here is the breadth and depth, that's something that she had. In this sector, so it's been extremely helpful. Not only running the committee, but also being a part of the board, also being a member of the community, having much stronger awareness. So this is extremely emphasize how important that is.
Thank you, Mathis. Anybody else?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Well, Paul Espinosa, I'm with the American Legion. I deal a lot with veterans throughout the state. Coming to this physically, I'm always in the meetings, but online. Coming to this physically and with the stuff that they brought out today, it means a lot. Bringing forward, and it's good timing because I'm heading out to New Orleans for a national convention, dealing with veterans throughout the nation, along talking to them about veterans in New Mexico. We do have approximately about 160 veterans here in New Mexico. A lot of them are unemployed. I'm assuming when I talk to Chris, it gives me, I believe it's a percentage, about 9% of them are unemployed throughout New Mexico. And also being that said, I do deal with Curtin Air Force Base a lot, along with other military bases, along with New Mexico Veteran Services, and also dealing with veterans of the National Guard Reservists, doing for TAPS transitioning program on how to help veterans transition from the military back to civilian. And that being said, again, certifications crossed over from as doctors, being CDL drivers, truck drivers, getting your certification moved from the military to civilian. And I would like to also ask Kelly and the Education and Workforce Committee, I could get a lot of help and putting a lot of input towards the veteran spectrum. We do deal a lot in the national level with first, of course, it's children and youth, and we do Americanism, and veteran affairs is a big thing, which I'm gonna be going for, is veteran affairs, dealing with the veterans throughout nations, especially letting them know what New Mexico is all about. But I'd like to implement a lot about veterans, helping the veterans out to getting back off the streets and get them employed through New Mexico. If I could need some help to any of the committees, I'll be available if you need me to. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And that's a good.
Chair?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I had a comment and I'm not sure I heard correctly, but I think there was a comment to nominate Scott Lopez to be on the board, and I just wanted to second that, as he supported a lot of our efforts to grow the space industry from California, and then now is back home and has started Vida Mejor Capital in Espanola up in northern New Mexico, where my family is. And also some broadband efforts. I know he spoke yesterday, but just wanted to second that. I think that would be a great nomination.
If you could, Casey, maybe email us. We can kind of work that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Paul. You bring up a good point. We have some new board members. If you're interested in one of the committees, I know that they're always happy to have more members. Just a recap, we've got a policy committee. They have plenty of stuff on their plate. I'm sure they'd be happy for help. We have a business engagement committee, data and performance, and the workforce and education committee. So if any of those, if you have any questions about what those are, you can ask us, any of the chairs. I'm glad to help you with that. Any other comments? Okay, I don't see any. I'll just be super brief. I always appreciate these conferences because it always kind of gets me excited and it gives me more energy to do this stuff. And so I appreciate it. I always appreciate hearing from the people that created. You saw a lot of very moist eyes in the audience, and it helps reinforce that what we're doing matters. Everybody that's part of the system, it's great. I'll leave it there. Yeah, but no, it's great, and if anybody can participate in future years, I'd encourage that. And then the data, well, I saw a lot of great things at the sessions. And what I'm hoping to do is bring some of the stuff that I saw to us so we can kind of see it. I don't want to do a 45-minute or an hour and a half, Michael. Not every time, but maybe some combined condensed presentations for us. I think there's very good information that I think would be valuable for us. And I open that up to anybody else who attended, stuff that you saw that you might be think would be important. Let me or any of the staff know, we can kind of work that in. So I just want to put that out there. Other than that, that's all I've got. Do we have any public comment? No?
No.
Okay.
We did have someone request to do a public
Hasn't
comment.
shown.
We don't see him online, but I do want to extend it in case he's in the audience.
Anybody want to make a
Mr.
comment?
Bruce Weatherby. Okay, then no.
All right. Well, there being no public comments, we're at the end of our agenda. So thank you, everybody. We're only 5 minutes over. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the work you put in, all of the effort, all of your passion. If there are no objections, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yay.